Welcome. I think this is my fifth day. I think my fifth day speaking here. I see, I guess it's the weekend, huh? Saturday we have some new faces. You're not new, I know you, many of you to some degree or another. Very happy you're here today. I tried from the beginning, for the most part. I traveled with Srila Prabhupada. I first started traveling with him in September 1972 through all of 1973. And then I was again with him from the second half of 1974 until June of 1975. So I, for the most part, been going along chronologically as I was with him in different places. I went around the world with him 5 times in those 2.5 years. He went around the world 14 times in 10 years. So today, yesterday we were talking about Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan in 1972, and I mentioned one person who Prabhupada gave sannyas to. He became a good friend of mine, Paramahamsa Swami. And today I was going to tell a little bit more about him and I together with Srila Prabhupada. One thing I wanted to do, I have this book here, because I've talked about the cooker many, many times with Srila Prabhupada. So I wanted to show you, we can pass this around. You can see this is the cooker. This is the brass cooker. It doesn't look very shiny right here. It hasn't been polished for some time, I think, at this point. But you can see the 3 tiers, and you'll see the lid, which I keep saying was a wok. And for those of you here today, I said this cooker was my best friend when I traveled with Prabhupada, because you could make 6-7 course meal in the cooker in the course of 45 minutes, and it did all of that cooking by itself, steaming by itself. And this person he's with is Upendra. Upendra is also my senior god brother, and he was Prabhupada's servant for over a year as well. He was also very expert at using the cooker. And just because it's here, if you see this picture here, this is Srila Prabhupada getting a massage. And this person here was me in another lifetime. This is Sruta Kirti when he was 22 years old, so which was about 52 years ago. So this is Bhaktivedanta Manor. So a very nice place there in outside London in England. So I'll give this to someone you can take, and just so people can see what the cooker looks like, and if they want to look at any other pictures. That's a book that it was published back in 2006, and it tells some stories about myself with Srila Prabhupada, and it's called What is the Difficulty? I explained how it got that name. It was the very first words Srila Prabhupada said to me. So Paramahamsa, like I said, he was younger than I was by a year or 2. So I'm traveling with Srila Prabhupada, just 22 years old. He became his secretary. I'm going the wrong way. He became his secretary about a year after he received sannyas. And as I mentioned, when he did receive sannyas, some of his godbrothers, they were a little upset that they didn't think they knew he was young, hadn't been in ISKCON society very long, a few years, and Prabhupada gave him sannyas. As I explained, he was going to Vietnam. This was 1972, so that was very brave of him and his godbrother, the idea of going to Vietnam, a country that was at war, to go there preaching. Anyway, when he finally became Prabhupada's servant, I remember it was in Juhu, and which is just 2 hours south of here. And as I said, one of the complaints was he didn't know any slokas. He couldn't chant Sanskrit slokas. So now we became Prabhupada's servant. I've described to you what it was like going in and out of Srila Prabhupada's room. Every time you went in, you offered obeisances. Every time you went out, I offered obeisances. So now Paramahamsa, he's very excited, eager servant. He was a little taller than me. If you look at the photo, you'll see he had a moon-like face, like Chandra, a very pretty, nice face. And he was, wasn't heavy, but he was well-built and big. So the first time came, Srila Prabhupada rang the bell, and he said, call Paramahamsa. This was my business. Always ring the bell. I would go in and he would say, get this person, like that. So he said, call Paramahamsa. So I called Paramahamsa Swami. Prabhupada wants to see you. He's his secretary now. So Paramahamsa, of course, he's very excited now. He's traveling with Srila Prabhupada. He's his secretary. He's in his entourage. So, like any of us, he was very happy, very excited, a little nervous. So he comes into the room, and right before Prabhupada's desk, he just plops down. He does a dandavat, flat out dandavat. And he says his obeisances, and he chants another prayer. Now he's chanting slokas. He starts chanting glorification of his spiritual master. Then he sits up and Prabhupada speaks with him. So then later on, another time came, Prabhupada called Paramahamsa. So I call Paramahamsa, he comes in, same thing, does a dandavat. He's chanting, lying on the floor. So then what happened? Third time, I told you 3 times. 3 times is the charm. By third time, something's going to happen. So the third time came, offers obeisances, does a dandavat, flat on the floor. Prabhupada says, get up. How are we going to get anything done? You lying on the ground. So after that, he didn't go through so much ritual in front of Srila Prabhupada. He wanted to do something. It's very nice. He said, very nice, respectful, but we have business to do. Sit up, he said. So that was Paramahamsa. And while we were in Juhu at this time, and again, no temple there, Prabhupada's staying in a flat on the 1st or 2nd floor. There were a series of flats, 8 flats, 4 different buildings. And in Juhu, one of my godsisters was cooking for Prabhupada every day. Palika, godsister Palika. She was cooking for him every day, and she also used the cooker. It was an art to use the cooker, and also, I guess, a science. It required attention, lots of attention. So because she's cooking for Srila Prabhupada, after massage, I had some free time, which was not something I had very often. And now Paramahamsa, he's Prabhupada's secretary, and Nitai, he was Prabhupada's Sanskrit editor. So the 3 of us, we travel with Srila Prabhupada. He generally always had servant, secretary, and his Sanskrit editor. So they didn't have the same schedule as me. My schedule was in the room 24 hours a day. No one else had that schedule with Prabhupada. But because I had this window that had developed after massage, I didn't have to be there. She's serving Srila Prabhupada's lunch. She's taking the lunch plates off after he's done, making the transfer. She's doing all of that. And after lunch, as I mentioned, Prabhupada takes a nap. That generally could be half hour, 45 minutes. So the 3 of us, and they both see me as a senior devotee, because I had been with Prabhupada now for almost 2 years, and we're all about the same age. I never saw myself as the senior devotee traveling with Srila Prabhupada. I always saw myself as junior. I'm always junior. But they didn't see things like that. But anyway, we're 1 block from the beach, the ocean, Juhu Beach. If you've been there, the Juhu Beach, very nice, flat. The water is not blue necessarily. Not necessarily, the water is not blue, period. But we were all Americans. Americans, you know, every American knows how to do 2 things, at least American males. You knew how to swim and you knew how to drive cars. You know, you always, 16 years old, you're driving a car. It was automatic. So we decided to go to the beach. While Prabhupada's having his lunch and having his nap, we all go to the beach together. It's not a really nice beach, and it's very hot. Weather, this is probably even warmer than it is now. It's hot, the water's warm, really no waves, and no one goes in the water. You don't see people in the water, but you saw us in the water. We're all in our gumshoes, and we're splashing in the water. And so this went on for some days. And then, one day, Paramahamsa says, I have too much to do. He said, I can't do this. Prabhupada's getting letters. I have to type the responses, take dictation. He said, I don't have the time. Okay. And the 2 of us are going. Another day goes by, and then Nitai says, I have a workload I have to do. My translating work, I have to do the word-for-word translation. He said, I can't go. So, okay. Well, me, I'm determined. This is something I hadn't had, to just be out of my room for an hour. It was something that I cherished. So I kept going to the beach by myself, put my gumshoe down, lay down there in the hot sun, hot, humid sun, and I'd go in the water just because I could. It was just because I could, I was doing it. So then one day I come back from the beach and I get that Paramahamsa, Sruta Kirti, Prabhupada wants to see you. And he's really mad. And told this was our mantra amongst ourselves, that we would say, Prabhupada wants to see you and he's really mad. And you go, oh, Krishna. He knows you're going to the beach by yourself. Imagine, I was going there by myself, no company, no devotee association. I said, oh, okay. So it was one of those times. I had been with Prabhupada a long time, so it was an intimacy that was there. So I come into the room, and like I did the very first day when I met him, I didn't offer obeisances in front of him. I came in through the door and I offered obeisances right beside him, right beside his asana, which is just a cushion on the floor. And I offer obeisances and I get up. He doesn't say anything. He's looking at me. He's like, yes? So now you have to think. You know, always have to think what to say to Srila Prabhupada, you know. I said, you wanted to see me? He looks at me, he says, no. He's playing with me. I always was been saying over the days, Prabhupada was very funny, and he enjoyed having fun with his disciples, you know, just like you would have fun with your child or grandchild. He's playing with me. I don't realize it. I said, you didn't ask to see me? He's going, no. So he's making me. I have to say, I said, oh, Paramahamsa said you wanted to see me. And he's like, oh. He said you were upset. We were going, I explained, we're going to the ocean every day, the 3 of us, and then one dropped out, the next dropped out. So I'm trying to paint the whole picture very nicely. I said, and then I'll be going by myself because they both had service. He said, oh, he said, you're going to the beach? He said, you're swimming? I said, yes, Prabhupada, going swimming. He said you were... So I just spilled the beans. He said, you were upset? He said, no. He said, swimming is a Vaishnava activity. I said, so it's okay? He said, yes, it's okay. I never went to the beach again. It was, he let me off the hook that time. In that same place, as I said, I was always getting sick. Most of us, we were getting sick here and there. And I had a juicer, one of those centrifugal juicers, because I was convinced if I, just like we did in the US, if I make fresh juices and I eat like this, and like, I'll become healthier. Of course, eating anything raw in India can be very dangerous unless you really prepare it nicely. It could be a dangerous thing. But I'm making carrot juice. And it was in the afternoon, and you know, juicers make noise. And so all of a sudden I hear the bell ring. I go in the room, Prabhupada says, what is that noise? I said, oh, Prabhupada, I said, I've been making juices, I said, for my health. He said, so much noise, is it necessary, all this noise? And I'm like, no, Prabhupada, I said, it's okay. So I thought, that's the end of that. And then another 10 minutes go by, he rings the bell. He said, so you're making juice every day for your health? I said, well, yes, Prabhupada. He said, it's okay, you can do that. He said, it's fine, you can do it. But I never made juice again. So we'll go back to where I was. We were in Vrindavan, Radha Damodar Temple for the month of Kartik. You want to hear about the monkey and Srila Prabhupada's slippers? Would you like to hear that, or we can go forward? This is one of the most, if you ever go to Vrindavan, monkeys are there. They've always been there. We see Krishna with the monkeys. He was feeding butter to the monkeys. Said no good, just feeding it to the monkeys. Monkeys have been in Vrindavan before we ever arrived there. So at this time, Prabhupada was staying on the first floor, which in the US would mean second floor. And in front of it was just a room with a bath, and in front was a patio, which is the roof of the ground floor, this concrete patio. And it's where Prabhupada would bathe after his massage. He had me put 2 buckets. That time there were metal buckets, I think like brass buckets they were. Nice. And he said, just fill them up the water and the sun will heat it enough. Also, the monkeys enjoyed the water. They would come and splash in it and drink from it, and it didn't matter. So as I said, every day after bath, Prabhupada would dress and he would sit behind his desk on the floor, a little called coffee table, we call his desk on the floor, and he had his tilak set. He had the ball of tilak about the size of a golf ball, and that was on a little silver plate, and he had a little silver lotu with the spoon, and his mirror, a compact style mirror. So he puts his tilak on, says his Gayatri. He's saying Gayatri mantra, and I come into the room, open the door and come into the room to do something. And when I came into the room, I didn't close the door behind me. So I come in, I'm offering obeisances, and all of a sudden I see Prabhupada. He grabs his ball, tilak, the size of a golf ball, chandan. He grabs this ball and he heaves it, he throws it right past my head. And I'm like, and he goes, monkey, monkey. A monkey had stolen one of his slippers. And Prabhupada threw the tilak trying to prevent it from happening, but monkeys, Prabhupada said they have mystic powers. The monkeys have mystic powers. Because they could do things in a few seconds. They could come in, grab something, and be gone. He said, you can't do that. That's mystic power. Prabhupada always downplayed the idea of mystic power. And he would say, mystic power is simply something you learn how to do. Someone else can't do it. So they're, ooh, mystic powers, you know. So he said even the monkeys had mystic powers. So it grabbed his his slipper, nice little slipper, was vinyl or something. And then he gets up out of his seat and he's like, come on. And we go out there, and of course the monkey's right above the door, sitting on the roof level there with the slipper. That's the same thing they do now. And he's got the slipper in his mouth. Now their favorites are glasses. They grab your glasses when you're not looking. But he's got the slipper in his mouth. Prabhupada comes out and he has his cane. And he's waving his cane. I'm beside him. I have no idea what I'm doing. This is my very first experience with monkey thievery. And he's yelling, you know, monkeys, rascal monkeys, they're such rascals. And he's waving the cane trying to get to the thing. Of course, he couldn't get at it, you know, and he hands it to me, who was a few inches taller. And monkeys, they're very clever, they're very expert. And he's just toying the monkeys, take it out of his mouth, put it back in, and he's just holding it there. And Prabhupada says, get some peta. Because in his room, there was always a jar filled with the sweets. Anyone came into his room, you got a sweet before you left. You got sweet prasadam. So he says, get some para. So I go in and I grab 3 balls, 3 sweet balls. They're hardish, not soft like rasgulla, they're firm. So I grab 3 of them, and I come back out, and Prabhupada's standing there, hi, monkeys, rascal monkeys, you know. And then he tells me, he said, now you offer him the sweet. He said, you go put your hand up. He said, and you exchange the sweet for the slipper. This is what they would do. They would bargain, you know, they would bargain with whatever they stole from you. So he said, be careful. He said, you go and when he's offering this, you grab the slipper, you give him the sweet. Yes, Prabhupada. So the first time, of course, and this is very new to me, and I'm kind of enjoying the whole thing. I'm in Vrindavan with Srila Prabhupada with monkeys. What could be more fun, you know? But it wasn't fun at the time. But looking back, it was like a very wonderful pastime. So I'm like doing it, and the monkey's doing it. He's going like this with the slipper, and I'm going like this with the sweet. And we get to and he puts it just out of my reach. And he grabs the sweet and pulls back on his slipper. And he's got the sweet on the one cheek. Prabhupada goes, no. He said, you gotta be very careful. He said, you gotta be careful. Yes, Prabhupada. All right, try it again. So now I got the second sweet. The same thing happens. He was much quicker than I was, because he has mystic powers. I'm putting it up, and you can see it, his slipper's right there. In between, he's gnawing on it. Little teeth marks, his little teeth marks are in it. I lost the second one, and we came to the third one. I told you, everything was always 3. So the third one, I'm trying so hard with this monkey. And he got that, so he got all the sweets in his mouth. He's not eating them, he's storing them for later, who knows? Could have been a she, maybe for the little baby, I don't know. But now he's got a mouthful of para. And Prabhupada's getting frustrated, you know, because I couldn't get it done. And then the monkey has the slipper in his mouth, and he got it in such a way, and he goes, and he just ripped the top of the sole off of the heel end. And Prabhupada goes, he's ruined it. And Prabhupada went into the room, sat down. And now, after that happened, of course the monkey now has 3 sweets. Prabhupada went into his room, I'm done. The monkey doesn't care, he's not wearing the slippers, so he just puts the slipper down. He doesn't just put it down, he puts it down so it's hanging off the edge of the roof. You can't reach it from where I was, but he leaves it dangling there, just to annoy you even more, make you think you can get it, you know. And just as that happened, Shilavadi's son, she had 2 sons, Grish and Birbhadra. I don't remember, I think it was Garish. He was walking by along the roof. He was like 10 years old, 11 years old. And I said, Grish, that's Prabhupada's sandal. I said, get it for Prabhupada. And I hand him the cane. So he grabs the cane. No, I don't hand him the cane. So he walks, goes up the stairs, goes to there's no monkeys around, just that slipper. It's literally golden looking in color, a little tannish. And as soon as he puts his hand on it, a dozen monkeys just appear, because they work in groups like that, you know. They appear and they start attacking him. So now he's screaming, Sruta Kirti, help, Sruta Kirti. And I'm right down at the bottom and I throw the cane up to him. And he gets the cane and just starts swooping it around. And they all go away. And he comes down with the slipper. So I grab the slipper from him, I go into Prabhupada's room, I offer obeisances, and I show him the slipper. And the little tag from where he ripped it, the monkey ripped it. And Prabhupada looks at his slipper. He said, oh, it's not so bad. He said, can you glue it back on? I said, yes, Prabhupada. He said, okay, glue it back on. He said, I can still use them. Imagine. Anyone would have bought Prabhupada everything, slippers, clothes, you name it, they would get it. But he's saying, it's okay, it's still usable. These slippers are still usable. He said, you've repaired it and put it back. And me, being with Prabhupada, I never even thought, well, I'll tell someone, get Prabhupada a pair of slippers. They would have been very happy to get those slippers that Prabhupada wore for months and months, lotus slippers. And I repaired it, I gave it back to Prabhupada. Every morning, Prabhupada wore those shoes going out on his morning walk with the little teeth marks in it. This was Prabhupada. He had no interest, no fancy, didn't care. They were working, he was content. So he had those. We went to Ahmedabad. We stayed there for a week. We're still using those slippers. In Ahmedabad, I got my first sickness, Indian sickness. After being there now for like 5 weeks, it finally hit me. I don't even know what it was. I think it was malaria. At the time, I didn't know any of these diseases. I never had malaria, jaundice, dysentery, none of these things. But I was gone. And we're staying at one life member's house in Ahmedabad. And they called for a doctor, and this homeopathic doctor comes in and he's got his little black bag, little black case, and he opens it up and there's like 100 bottles. They all look exactly the same, little bottles with little white round pills in them, little sugar pills. That's all they look like to me. But he gave me this bottle, take 2, put under your tongue, do it whatever, 3 times a day. And boom, the next day I was fine. And Prabhupada and I are in the room one day, and I said, Prabhupada, I've never been so sick. Prabhupada looked at me. He said, really? He said, disease, he said, is our natural condition. He said, being healthy is very rare. He said, being healthy is very rare. He said, disease is the natural condition. He said, but very good, he said. But then I realized when Prabhupada would say something, very simple, but it was also very profound, because we all had, I realized, one disease. Prabhupada said, this skin disease. We all think we're this body. This is the disease. This is why we're here. We think we're this body. And me, I was clearly identifying with it, saying, I've never been so sick. It was my body. So Prabhupada said that, and then I realized this is our disease. We have to get out of this bodily concept. So he did programs there, Pandal, just like he did in Delhi or Mumbai that he did that time. And he spent a week there, and then we went to Hyderabad. We get to Hyderabad, and we're staying at this Mr. Pitti's house, Panayalal Pitti. At that time, he was like one of the wealthiest people in all of Hyderabad. He lived in this very big palatial place. He had a huge back garden. It had like at least a dozen, I think 20 garages, car in every garage. One of the cars, now this is 1972, was a 59 Chevy Impala convertible. I'm sure it was the only one in all of India. He had bought this Chevrolet Impala convertible that Prabhupada was in it. He went out when they took him out into the street, everyone watching. So we arrived there and we're greeted at the door. And Mr. Pitti says, "Does Prabhupada need anything?" I said, "Yeah, he could use a new pair of shoes. He could use sandals." It finally hit me after like a week. I said, "Yes, he could use a new pair of sandals." "No problem, no problem." He sent his servant out. His servant comes back with this very flashy pair of sandals with the little toe hole for the big toe, and they're leather. And I bring him and show him the Prabhupada. He said, "Oh, I can't use these." He said, "They're leather." He said, "I can't wear these." So then they went and exchanged them and got a proper pair of sandals. I gave them to a godbrother. They sit there in Alachua in his home under a glass case. These slippers of Srila Prabhupada have everything. All the teeth marks are on it. Vrindavan dust is there on the bottom of them. A very wonderful pair of slippers. But this was Prabhupada's mood. Never asked for anything. So then from there we go to Mumbai. So this is, of course, my first experience there. And now he had done, Radhanath Maharaj, he talks very often when he first met Prabhupada at the Pandal in Mumbai. So now this was 2 years later, or the next year. Again, big thousands of people are there, and Prabhupada's speaking every night, giving class in Hindi every night. And these deities, very beautiful deities, Radha Krishna deities were there. And every morning we're going on the morning walk, and it's just myself, Srila Prabhupada, his secretary, Paramahamsa, and myself, because we were staying at, his name was can't think of it right now, it will come to me. We were staying at his house. He gave us the whole flat to stay in. It's right off of the ocean, this house. And there was a little elevator, literally fit 2 people in it. It was a very slow elevator. So he was up on the 2nd floor, so it had to go up 2 floors. And he let us use his car, which was an ambassador. For those, I don't think anyone here would know, at that time in India, there were 2 cars pretty much. You had ambassadors, and then you had the little Fiats. All the taxis were Fiats pretty much. And the ambassadors, people that owned the car, they would have these ambassadors, and they came in like 3 colors. They came in black, white, and tan, a light tan. And they all looked exactly alike. And they were all very uncomfortable. And no shock absorbers. The back seat had this big hump in the middle, so when there was 3 people, whoever sat in the middle was was always struggling. Yeah, yes. We still have the one in Juhu. There's an ambassador, Srila Prabhupada's, one of the ambassador cars he had. They have it there in Juhu. They bring it up whenever there's a festival, they bring it up from the garage downstairs. In Mayapur, there's one. So Shyama Sundar's driving. Me, to this day, I wouldn't consider driving a car in India. It's a very scary idea. But Shyama Sundar would drive on the morning walk, and we'd go every morning. And we'd walk along, I think, Sea Life, Ocean Drive or something. It was a nice walk right by the sea. Each morning we're going back and forth and back and forth. And the one morning we're on the walk, it's just the three of us. And as Prabhupada's walking, this is on the way, and there's someone lying on the pavement on the side, which was not so unusual. But as we passed by, Prabhupada said, "You see that man?" "Yes, Prabhupada." He said, "He's dead." We just kept walking. So then we come back. Of course, he hadn't moved, and I mean, he never did an investigation, but I assumed, that's what happened while he was lying there. Prabhupada said he was dead. Then another morning, we walked back and we walked forth, back and forth, about a mile and a half, 2-3 kilometers, and we get back to the car. And Shyama Sundar opens the car, I open the back door, Prabhupada gets in. I go around, I get in the other side, sit down next to Prabhupada, and Shyama Sundar can't start the car. Shyama Sundar was very, very good secretary, very efficient, best secretary Prabhupada had. And after a minute or two, Prabhupada, he says, "Something's wrong with this car, not working." He said, "I'll go get us a taxi." So he leaves the car. So now Prabhupada and I are sitting in the back seat of the car by ourselves. And all of a sudden, these two young Indian men, they get up and they open the front door of the car. And they get in, and now they're talking in Hindi with Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada starts laughing. He looks at me. He said, "We're in the wrong car." They all look the same. He said, "We're in the wrong car." And I'm like, "Oh." He said, "That's okay." He said, "They're going to take us home." He said, "Just see." He said, "If this was in your country," he said, "and we were sitting in someone's car," he said, "what would happen?" He said, "They'd take you out," he said, "and beat you," he said. "But here in India," he said, "still there's some culture." He said, "There's some Vedic culture is here." He said, "They were young, in their 20s, and dressed nicely at that time." He said, "They're going to take us home." And they took us home. It was about a 10-minute drive. And then Prabhupada invited them upstairs for prasadam. And they're, no, we have to go to the office. They said, "Thank you, we have to go to the office, Swamiji." And then we went upstairs. We're still looking for Shyama Sundar. We don't know what happened to him. No, he showed up later on. I imagine he found the proper car, the right car. And then we go in the morning the next day, and the sun comes up. It's always around sunrise, sun would come up. And the sun comes up, and we're walking, and Prabhupada's on one side. I'm in the middle, I have microphone. Shyama Sundar's next to me. And as the sun's coming up, and Shyama Sundar looks at me, and he starts laughing. He said, "You should see your eyes." He said, "Boy, do you have jaundice?" Because my eyes were, your white, so your eyes turned yellow. He's laughing, it's funny. He said, "You have jaundice." I said, "Oh, okay." I didn't feel anything at the time, maybe a little sluggish, but in India, you always felt a little sluggish, always felt a little tired in India. So we get back to Kartikeya Mahadevi's house. That was his name, Mahadevya, Kartikeya. He was making wheatgrass back then in India. In 1972, Kartikeya was making wheatgrass. He was really into health. He had books he was putting out. And he was a great supporter of Srila Prabhupada. So he lived there with his wife, and they had a daughter and a son. The daughter was about 15 years old. And the son was a few years younger. Remember, the daughter's name was Kirti. I thought, wow, what an interesting name, Kirti. I was 21 years old. So they vacated the house. Srila Prabhupada and his entourage, we took over the entire house. I don't know where they stayed. His wife, she did the cooking, which meant she had her Brahmin cook there and everything, cooked for all of us. And we get back that day. So then we get back, and that's the big news. Sruta Kirti has jaundice. And that was like, this was our excitement, whatever is going on, Now I had jaundice. Malaria was last week. This illness of the week was jaundice. And Tamal Krishna is there, and he said, this is very contagious. He said, you can't cook for Prabhupada. He said, if you have jaundice, he said, you can't bring him his plates, you shouldn't massage him, because it's contagious. I said, oh. So I did what I always did. I went into my father, I offered obeisances to Prabhupada. I said, Prabhupada, I have jaundice. And he goes, oh. I said, Tamal Krishna Maharaj says that I shouldn't do my service. I shouldn't massage you, shouldn't cook for you, bring you the plates, all that, because it's very contagious. He said, how do you feel? He said, do you have any strength? Are you able to do your service? I said, yes, Prabhupada. I said, I feel okay. He said, you just do your service. Don't worry about it. I said, okay. Then he looks at me. He said, what are the symptoms? I said, I was very happy because I knew the symptoms because I had all of them. I said, well, your eyes are yellow. I said, and your urine's brown. Your urine turns brown. I said, and you're very weak. He looked at me. He said, perhaps I have jaundice. So I said, Prabhu was always funny, always ready to make a joke, Perhaps I have jaundice, he said. He said, just do your service. He said, if you can do your service, do your service. Yes, Prabhupada. And I can continue doing my service. And of course, we all know, back in those days, we would hear these analogies, so many analogies. One of them was the jaundice analogy. When you have jaundice, what do? Sugar cane juice. So that was like, woohoo, I can have sugar cane juice all day long. That was like a blessing, sugar cane juice. And when you drink it, it doesn't taste sweet because you have jaundice. And as you get better, it becomes sweeter and sweeter. So Prabhupada would use that analogy about chanting Hare Krishna. You can chant. Maybe you don't taste sweetness, but the more you chant, gradually it becomes sweeter, sweeter, sweeter. Just like sugar cane juice. Nothing but sweet sugar cane juice. So that was the jaundice episode there. And then I'm massaging Prabhupada there. There was a little patio area, veranda, where the sun would come in. So I said, Prabhupada, take the morning sun. So I'm massaging Prabhupada that day. And we're sitting there and you can hear, I don't know what they called them. I said the other day, we would call them hawkers in the U.S., where they would sell their wares just by walking down the street. So they would shout different things. One was, offering sharpen your knives. Another one was collect your newspaper, your old papers. They would collect papers. Other ones would be selling the produce, your fruit and vegetables. And another one actually would tin that tiffin. And Prabhupada would say, oh, this one's doing this and this. So as I'm massaging him, he's telling me what everyone is offering, services in those days. And then his legs are out. So I've been with him now for 2 months. And he's sitting and I'm massaging his legs. So his gumsh is up. I'm going up and down his legs. And he had a scar on his thigh, the inside of his thigh. And he said, you see this scar? I said, yes, Prabhupada. He said, when I was like 4 or 5 years old, he said, I was playing with matches in my front yard. He said, and something happened. He said, the match, and it hit my cloth. He said, and my clothes went up in flames. He said, and out of nowhere, he said, this man appeared and he put out the flames. He said, then he just left. He said, that scar is from this time. So this was the second scar he was telling me about. I told you about the scar on the forehead. So this was the scar on his thigh. But he said it, he made it sound quite mystical, that this man appeared out of nowhere and put out the flames. As I said, Prabhupada, he was a very determined young boy, and mischievous. He could be quite mischievous. When we were going through Calcutta in the car, one day we went past the school. I was going to school, and there was a football field, soccer field for any Americans. A football field was there. And Prabhupada said, oh, he said, I went to school here. He said, and here we would play football. He said, I was on the football team. He said, I was the goalie. He said, because I didn't like running around. So I just took the job as the goalie. He said, I would just stand there. So that was his business there. So that was a very special place. And at that time, the Juhu property was there, which was a big, big effort to get the Juhu property. And yeah, after that, after Mumbai, then we went to, as I said, New Zealand. So this Juhu property was always contentious. The person who sold this property, his name was Mr. Nair. And he was a husky man, strong-looking fellow, Mr. Nair. And they were adversaries because after he sold it to Srila Prabhupada, as many times would happen in India, and he had done before. He had sold it once, he had sold it twice, then through legal jugglery, he would get the property back and keep the money. But now he sold the property to Srila Prabhupada. So he met his match. Prabhupada said when someone's cunning, you have to be more cunning. And Prabhupada, this man was cunning, but he was dealing with Srila Prabhupada. And as soon as Prabhupada got the property, what did he do? Who knows? What did he do?
He brought the deities.
He put Radharasa Bahari on the property. You put the deities. He put the Lord on the property. Beautiful deities. You go there now, you see most beautiful deities, Radharasa Bahari. So he put them right there. Literally, they built a shed where they stayed. Tin roof, walls, just simple walls and doors in the front, right there on the property. And he told them, Radharasa Bahari, you please stay here. He said, someday I'll build you a very beautiful, grand temple. Mr. Nair, he didn't want any part of this, simply going to take it back. So this was going on legally. Prabhupada's traveling around the world, and his disciples are calling him, and this is happening. None of us Westerners knew how to do it, these shrewd, very shrewd Indian people. It was going on all the time. It had been going on for a year already, and it went on for years more. But now, Prabhupada traveled to New Zealand. So I told you his name, Tushta Krishna Swami. He was the temple president in New Zealand. Previously, he had been the temple president in Juhu, this very property that was Prabhupada had bought right next to the beach. This property was, this whole area was just a fishing village. Back then, 1972, at least most of us had no idea that this was going to become one of the most sought-after properties in the whole area. But Prabhupada wanted it, and he purchased it with his down payment then. At that time, there was just a shack where the devotees had to live in. My godbrothers, godsisters, the situation they lived in, most austere. Big, was filled with mosquitoes because it's right by the water, and it was swampy. It was swampy air, big mosquitoes, big rats. And they're staying there, because you have possession of the property. So now we get to New Zealand, and we're there 1 day, 2 days, and I'm giving Prabhupada a massage in his sitting room. And Tushta Krishna, he comes to the door, the front door of the room. He said, Prabhupada, there's a phone call for you from India. Prabhupada never received a phone call. You all know the story way back in the beginning, 1966. Prabhupada was amazed when he got his room there in New York City, and he ordered a phone, $25 down payment or something. The phone was there the next day. He said in India it would take years to get a phone if you applied for a phone, literally years to get a phone. And then there wasn't much you could do with it anyway. You had to place trunk calls in advance, and it's very costly. But he was shocked. He got a phone, and overnight they installed the phone. This is 1966. And then one night, he says at midnight, one of his followers calls up. And he goes, yes. He said, oh, Swamiji, how are you? He said, you're calling me at midnight to ask me how I am? He had the phone taken out the next day. Never used the phone after that. That was it. Everything was by letter. Emergency, he would send telegrams. Would go back and forth somewhere around the world. Otherwise, letters. And those letters, you might send a letter from Los Angeles to where Prabhupada was in New York City. By the time it got to New York City, he was in London. Then they would send it to London. By the time it got to London, he was somewhere else. A letter could take weeks to get to Srila Prabhupada. And you would wait for that response. And you got a response to every letter that was sent, received a response. So the phone call was there. So Prabhupada's sitting on the floor in his gamsha. Now he's covered in oil, and I'm in my gamsha with oil in my hands. And he said, this phone call from India, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said to me, he said, you take it. So I go in, and I'm just on the phone for a minute or so. And I come back to the door, and Prabhupada's just looking at the door. He's just waiting. A phone call from India. He's just looking. As soon as I get to the door, I said, Prabhupada, Mr. Nayar's died. Prabhupada looks, he goes, thank you, Krishna. I was kind of a new devotee, and I think, wow, Prabhupada's happy someone died, you know, like, I think he's a Vaishnava, he's pure devotee Vaishnava, he's happy hearing about this death. I mean, he literally, thank you, Krishna, he said. So I go sit down, and then Prabhupada starts, and I'm massaging him, and he knows what's going on in my head. I'm a little confused, you know, a little confused. I know he was troublesome, so certainly didn't want it, but dead. So Prabhupada said, he created so much trouble, so much trouble. He said, to the deities. He said, Radha Rasa Bahari. And then Prabhupada started telling the story. He said, when we bought that place, he said, immediately I put the deities there, and I told them, I'll build you someday a very beautiful temple here. He said, and he made nothing but trouble. He said, for the deities, for myself, for the disciples. He said, even some of my disciples didn't understand. They were saying, well, let's just buy another piece of land. Let this go. Prabhupada said, the deities were there. I promised them I would build them a temple. He said, there's no question that we would let it go. He said, but they couldn't even deal with it. He said, they haven't been able to deal with it. He said, but such a demon he was. He said, and Krishna has killed him. So now, of course, I'm, okay. And I said, well, if Krishna killed him, I said, does that mean he was liberated? Because, you know, when you read Krishna book, Krishna kills a demon, they're liberated. They go back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada said, no. He said, that's only if Krishna kills you himself. He said he wasn't that big of a demon. And then he said, I remember last time we saw him in Juhu. He came to Juhu. And it was just like described in Vedic literature like Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, it would say how even the warriors, the Kshatriyas, they literally fought like 9 to 5. They would fight in the daytime. Then in the evening time, they could sit together and share food. He said this was the way it was. He said there was even fighting was going on. Even then they could be together. And I saw that Mr. Nair and Srila Prabhupada was like that. When they were together, and of course they would speak in Hindi, but there wasn't a lot of shouting or anything. They would just be conversing back and forth, you know. But Prabhupada said, last time I saw him, he said he came in and he was limping. And he said he was strong. He said, Mr. Nair was strong. Prabhupada put up his arms like this. He said, he was very strong. He said, but he was limping. And I thought, Krishna's going to kill him. And he said, actually, Krishna has killed him. He said, so don't mess with Krishna. Don't mess with Krishna. And of course, that was 72. So the temple was just the beginning. 1978, beautiful temple was built there for Radharasa Bahari. And I said, Prabhupada worked harder for these deities than any deity installation anywhere in the world. Very special deities, Radharasa Bahari. And their worship is wonderful. Grand worship goes on every day there at this place in Juhu. And of course, Juhu had become the most precious real estate in the whole area. When he bought it, people would say, why are you buying a piece of land here? What is the point? You know? Just like in Vrindavan. They would say, why are you building a temple here? No one comes here. Now in Vrindavan, every morning in front of the temple, we feed from 20 to 35,000 people that come by are giving Khichdi Prasadam every day, all day long. Khichdi Prasadam is being served. And in our Krishna hall, every day, twice a day, anywhere from 2,000 to 15,000 pilgrims, devotees, up to 15,000 when there's a big festival, are served full feast prasadam twice a day, all for free in Vrindavan, in this place where no one would come. They said no one will come. So that was Juhu. That was Mr. Nair. So there was shortly after that. Someone have my book? There's this one letter in my book. The only letter I put in my book from Srila Prabhupada was my favorite letter. Why are you giving it to Maharaj? Putting him to work. Thank you, Maharaj. I'm going to read you a little bit of this letter. Very encouraging for all of us, I think. If I can find it, let's see. Right there, the author. It's a very important letter. So many instructions here. This letter came from Tushta Krishna. The person who answered the phone was temple president in New Zealand, was the first temple president in Juhu. So all these connections are there. I mentioned yesterday, Tushta Krishna, he became a disciple of Prabhupada because Sai, his name was. He was a Kundalini yogi, Sai. He became Siddhaswarup. He's still there now with foundation, I think, called ISF or something. Yeah, his residence is in Hawaii. But he's done a lot of traveling. And he made the original, as I said the other day, the original Krishna West. He had a method, so many devotees, but he didn't stress changing your dress, shaving heads. And they had kirtans, nice kirtans, Western instruments, all these things were going on then. He's always been very popular, a lot of charisma, a lot of everything. So he came with 100 followers, and he offered them all to Srila Prabhupada. They all took initiation from Srila Prabhupada. But many of them stayed very, very attached to Siddha. One of them was this Tushta Krishna. Now they're both sannyasis by Srila Prabhupada. So December 14th, very shortly after this letter, he writes Srila Prabhupada. Here's some of the things he said. He says, I know you're having difficulties. Prabhupada responds to his letter. He says, I know you're having some difficulties because these ISKCON group and this Siddhist group, they didn't get along very well. They had different views of how preaching should go on, different things. He says, I sent Siddha there to help you. Keep a cool head. Because now he's literally, Tushta's ready to close down the temple and just go away, not be part of Prabhupada's group. He said, Krishna will protect you in all situations. He says, without you there, how will things go on? He said, so please, you just stay there, carry on. And then he says, regarding your questions, you have asked me if the spiritual master is ultimately Krishna. So the answer must be that if you think that way, then everyone is Krishna. See, this is the fallacy. We don't become Krishna's Krishna. Someone tells you you're going to become Krishna, they're nonsense, rascal. You'll see as Prabhupada says. So why we should think like this? Shaktavash avatar means a living entity, but he's empowered by Krishna. Not that he's Krishna, but on account of his exalted position, he's honored like Krishna. So here he's not saying directly about himself, but he's speaking about himself. Empowered. He spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Never been done, never been outside of India. Not that he is Krishna, that's Mayavad philosophy. He acts in the position of Krishna, but he's not Krishna. He's dear to Krishna. Yasha prasada bhagavat prasada. The spiritual master acts in that position because he's Krishna's confidential servant. And whenever Prabhupada received a letter, he didn't prioritize. If there were 10 questions in the letter, he didn't think, well, this one is more important, this is a trivial question, He answered the questions as they were asked. And whatever question was asked, he answered the question. So he says, your next question. After leaving this realm, does the devotee remain forever with his spiritual master? Yes, but I think you've got a mistaken idea. You speak of pure devotee, that he is a Shaktavish avatar. That means empowered by the Supreme Lord, a living entity who's specifically empowered to do something. That we should obey him only. These things are a wrong idea. If anyone thinks like that a pure devotee should be obeyed and no one else, that means he's nonsense. We advise everyone to address each other as Prabhu. Prabhu means master. So how should the master be disobeyed? Others, they are also pure devotees. All of my disciples are pure devotees. Anyone sincerely serving the spiritual master is a pure devotee. He may be Siddha Swarup, who he was seeing. He's the pure devotee. I only follow him. That was Tushta's idea. Prabhupada said he may be Siddha Swarup or others, or a Siddha Swarup, meaning not Siddha Swarup. This must be very clearly stated. Not only that your Siddha Swarup is a pure devotee and not others. Don't try to make a faction. Siddha Swarup is a good soul, but others shouldn't be misled. Anyone who is surrendered to the spiritual master is a pure devotee. It doesn't matter if he's Siddha Swarup, non-Siddha Swarup. Amongst ourselves, one should respect others as Prabhu, master, one another. As soon as we make a distinction, here's a pure devotee, here's non-pure devotee, that means I'm nonsense. Why you only want to be in the spiritual sky with Siddha Swarup? Why not all? Siddhaswarup will go. You will go. Shyamasundar will go. That was his secretary at the time. All others will go. We will have another ISKCON there. Of course, Mr. Nair must stay. Mr. Nair, poor Mr. Nair. He deserved every bit of it. And if somebody doesn't go, then I have to come back to take him there. One should remember this, and every one of my disciples should act in such a way that they may go with me and may not have to come back to take another birth. As for your next question, can only a few pure devotees deliver others? Anyone, if he is a pure devotee, he can deliver others. He can become a spiritual master. But unless he is on the platform, he should not attempt it. Then both of them will go to hell, like blind leading the blind. Okay. There's a few other things, but they were the main points in this very amazing letter Srila Prabhupada sent to Tushta Krishna shortly after the phone call.
He stayed after that letter,
Yeah.
right? He did stay.
Yeah. He was around for a few more years before he finally really separated. Prabhupada always tried to keep everyone together because, like the bundle of sticks, the more you're together, the more strength is there. But as soon as factions develop, then it just becomes arguments. And Prabhupada used the example of the father had two sons. That analogy, father has two sons. So two sons were enemies of each other, didn't like each other very much. And they're giving their father a massage. One's on the left side, one's on the right side. So the one on the right side, he's poking his father on the left side, in a way to create some pain. And the one on the left side, he's poking the father on the right side, doing the same thing. But all they're doing is creating pain to the father. So this is why Prabhupada stressed, particularly before he left, the need to cooperate. So that everyone is different. We're all individuals. We all have different understandings, different desires, different natures, how we do things. He said, but importance is to cooperate together. He said, and in that way we can progress. And we can see as years, decades have gone by, the importance of cooperation. And I always see Radhanath Maharaj, he's very, very good cooperating and in his own way, spreading Krishna consciousness in incredible ways over the years. Maharaj, you?
That was the title of our seminar, to love is to cooperate.
Yes, must cooperate. That's why we're here, cooperate. So we have a little more time. We have a little extended period. We started a little late today. And anyone has any questions, comments, corrections, observations? Vaisheshika would always say, any observations?
I was just remembering that Tulsi Gabbard is a disciple of Siddhaswarup.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard is a disciple of Siddhaswarup. Those of you many of you, if you look at news every now and then, she's been in the news over the last few years off and on, and has been put on Trump's cabinet, Tulsi Gabbard. So she's a disciple of Siddha, who's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And of course now she's being vehemently attacked by the Washington group. And one of the things they point to is she's a member of a cult. She's a member of a cult. So we're trying to let them know that this Krishna cult, Prabhupada sometimes would call us a cult, but in a very proper way. We're a cult. We say the cult, Lord Chaitanya's cult of Krishna consciousness.
But legally that's not true, because in 1977,
Yeah,
there was an
court case.
court case in New
Yes.
York that established us
As a bona fide religion. The judge read the books.
It was New York.
Yeah, in New York City. It's a bona fide ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, was a bona fide religion. But that doesn't stop the attacks nowadays. Everyone's attacking. This is our world now. Even in politics, no one tells you what they plan on doing. They just tell you how bad the other person is, how they are horrible. We're not, they're horrible, and it goes on both sides. Everything's become pretty degraded to this point. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
Firstly, I really feel a bit lost with words that amongst us we are so fortunate to have you and my spiritual master sharing pastimes of Sri Prabhupada. I think for us it's a very unique opportunity. We are breathing the air that you are breathing. We walk where you have walked. And I think yesterday I had the pleasure of touching your hands, the magical hands that has cooked for Sri Prabhupada and also massaged him. So we are very fortunate. That's my simple comment.
Hare Krishna.
My question is, you did service to Srila Prabhupada as his servant. When it ended, how did you feel? How did you feel the difference and separation? Hare Krishna.
Anyway, thank you for that. Everyone, we're all very fortunate to be here. Everyone, of course, I was very fortunate to be with Srila Prabhupada. So how does it feel in separation of Srila Prabhupada? After he left or after I left him as his servant? What was either one or both? Or?
I think for this, both.
Yeah. Well, I remember, we all remember that day, of course, when Prabhupada left in November of 1977. I was in Hawaii at that time. I was a temple president. I was the manager of the temple there. And I lived just outside the temple in a little place. And I got a call from my secretary. His name was Shanti Parayan. He called me up. Yeah, Shanti. And told me. So I immediately got in the car and drove to the temple, and I pulled up, and the temple has, go in the driveway, and there was a lava rock wall, but I didn't make it into the driveway. I drove into the lava rock wall. So that's how I was feeling right at that moment. The car went into the wall, and then I backed up and went into the temple. But it was something I know. And many of us never thought Prabhupada was going to leave because we knew we were not at all qualified for him to leave. And although he was 81 years old at the time, I know myself being with him, I always thought he would be with us till about 100 years. I figured 100 was proper that he would be. And I think so many devotees were thinking the same thing. So even though we saw him in Vrindavan, I was there in September, and he was literally skin and bones at that time. Hadn't eaten for months and didn't eat for more months. Every now and then take a little liquid or something. We just prayed and hoped that he would come back. And I also think for many of us, being there in the experience, that what he created was so amazing. The energy was so amazing. The feeling of serving him. It was very much like these fans, these fast fans. Even once it got unplugged, everyone was just doing service. We didn't even have time to feel that he had left. There was so many things going on. Gradually it came. And my realization was, which Prabhupada said, once the Guru goes, Your association is by following his instructions. The more you follow those instructions, then the more you can actually feel your spiritual master. And like even at these gatherings, we speak just like we talk about Krishna. We tell pastimes of Krishna because they're non-different from Krishna. And when you describe these things, Krishna is there. So the same thing applies with Srila Prabhupada. We actually get some relief by discussions about Srila Prabhupada, by our being with Srila Prabhupada, and you can feel his presence. Sometimes some people more than others, but depending on your desire and understanding, Guru is always there. We know that. Guru never dies. He's present in his words. But he's literally present. He can be there. He can give instructions. He can come in dreams. He can do things in so many ways. He's guiding us. Like Prabhupada said in that letter. Through his deity. As Maharaj knows, he can talk to it. So communication is there. Of course, we lament like anything, like it says in Ye Anila Premadana, right? We bang our heads against the rocks at the loss of that association. But that's the same thing. That also gives us the determination to follow, to again have that association. As Prabhupada said, there will be ISKCON in the spiritual world, and all of you will be there. Which also means we have to learn to get along here. Because if you don't get along here, you can't go to the spiritual world. You know, we have all these differences. Those differences are what keep us in the material world. Our attachments, our aversions, our friends, our enemies. You know, everything you have to let go. Become attached to Guru and Krishna, then you can go back and everyone will be together. But as long as we have that understanding, I have my friends and these people that I don't like them or whatever it is, they're all things that bind one to this body. Like it's described, the ocean, the bubbles in it, the ocean. Sometimes they connect and come back together. Sometimes your father, sometimes your son, sometimes you're this, sometimes you're the dog. All these things you can take birth over and over due to our attachment in different ways. But the separation is always there. The pain is always there. For me, when I see, you know, I get more than most people, I get to see myself with Prabhupada. You saw in the book me massaging Prabhupada. So it's bittersweet. There's a sweetness, but it's also bittersweet. You know, when you get that chocolate bar, it's 90% cocoa. Not very sweet, but bitterness is there. They say it's good for you, right? The more cocoa content, the better it is for you. But there has to be a balance. So the same thing, we have to have that balance where we feel, we pray for that association again. But we have our association through service. That's how we have our association. As Prabhupada said, maybe tomorrow I'll tell you some very personal stories with Srila Prabhupada. He told me, service is love. He said, just do your service, everything will be all right. So that's our business. Just do our service. Not a question of I'm happy, not happy, I'm this, service. We just have to connect with our service. Then presence is there. Guru is there. Is that okay? Yes, yes.
Guru Maharaj, devotees from all over the world. I'm very fortunate to see all of here. And, my question was yesterday's class that you was 5 years with Srila Prabhupada and you never have been to the Radha Damodar temple. But once you went for only 10 minutes and Prabhupada was, when he came back to Prabhupada's house and he was so annoyed. He told you, where was you? And you said, I was going to do the lesson. he said, why did you go? The lake is here, Lavana is here, old Swami is here, you mustn't go. So now this is my question. Sometimes in these my days, sometimes in London, winter or too cold, I feel like to go to the temple, but I haven't got the strength sometimes, so I try to avoid. And I said to family, you can go. I'm staying at home. All my deities, temple is here, and when you all go, I'll be more happy. I'll have more time with Krishna. I'm doing Kirtan and doing my reading Bhagavatam. So before I used to look forward to go to Rath Yatra in London. But now, 3, 4, 5 years I didn't go. And I'm quite happy that one day Krishna, the deities come to see me because that's why they're going out. And I satisfy myself. So, what do you think, Prabhu? You tell me.
You know the famous story that's gone around from Jamuna's book, when she was with her god sister, Dinatarani. There's the two of them, and they had their issues with many devotees in ISKCON. And those devotees were saying, you're in Maya. You're in Maya because you're not getting any association, ISKCON. So she wrote Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's famous quote, he said, association can be 2 or 200. He said, if association with 2 and you're Krishna conscious, then that's beneficial. But if you're with 200 and there's no Krishna consciousness, then what is the benefit? So, and the temple, particularly temples are there, they're training grounds. They're to show you the process of Krishna consciousness. Krishna is everywhere. He's in your home, he's in my home, he's in everyone's home. And Prabhupada, and this is what Siddha Swarup wanted very much, to make that process of, you make your home a temple. Don't worry, because of his own disagreement, which whether that's right or wrong, that's another thing, but the idea is you make your home a temple. And Prabhupada said the same thing. You know, I lived, for 20 years, I lived an hour away from the closest temple. I went there 4 or 5 times a year, festivals, because it was just difficult. And in family life, when you have wife, children, you know, everything takes time. But the business is then to make your home a temple. I have so many times people, you know, devotee couples, one last night came up to me. We were just married. They said, you know, please give your blessings. I said, Prabhupada's giving blessings. All I can do is direct you to Srila Prabhupada. And then I say, very nice. You read together every day 15, 20 minutes Prabhupada's books. You have a Tulsi plant in your house, you worship Tulsi Devi. And in that way, it will give you, you can be content. Yeah, you can be content and Krishna conscious in that way. Important thing is that Prabhupada gave us the morning program. And he did it himself. When we traveled, we went one time, was Perth, Australia. We were just in a house, little house, beach house. Perth is right on the beach of West Australia. And there was just 4 of us there. Prabhupada, 2, myself, secretary, and 2 other young Australian brahmacharis. And Prabhupada called them in one day, and he said, what is the program? And the devotee, no one knew what he was meaning. And they said, well, you know, in some of the evenings we have arranged, you know, we're going to have teachers coming and, you know, this person coming and this politician coming. And Prabhupada said, no, what's the program? And still we didn't understand. And he said, the morning program. So morning program can be done anywhere. Not that you have to run to the temple for a morning program. Even in your home, you make a morning program. And I see it in many homes that I go to. They have their deities. They offer little puja. They offer incense, flour, make offerings, have food offerings. They do Tulsi puja. They greet the deities. And they read from Prabhupada's books. That's fine. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much, and this will be good, and bless you. We are living, we are in the forest.
So, no, it's not the business of someone in the temple to make you feel bad. Why aren't you coming to the temple? Well, I have so many things I'm doing, I not always can make it. That's business is always encouraged. And that's what Prabhupada did, always encourage. But if you're at the temple, you must go to the temple. Even if you have your own little altar. He said, first, I'll tell you, well, it's already late. I guess we should stop here.
It's our future dreams for mercy. You might move here by the temple, then you can take
Yes,
our path.
yes.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We'll be back tomorrow. I don't know, 11 or 11:30 tomorrow? Back to the old 11:30. That means tomorrow. I'd be very happy to see all of you if you come tomorrow. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.